All right, we are live. Welcome to another edition of the Friday FARcast. I am Robert Phoenix, your Friday FARcaster. That's me. Let me check my mic level here. Let's see what we got going on with the mic. Mic checker 1 2, checker 1 2, checker 1 2. We're good. We're good. Okay, we're gonna let people kind of wander on in and assemble. I think that's the plan. That is the plan. How is everyone today? You can't find me on YouTube. Well, you should be able to find me. Let's see. Let me grab this link here. Give me 1 sec. Let me go to YouTube, and let me get the link. Somebody needs to. Somebody needs it. They need it. They need the link. So bear with me just for 1 second. All right. Here we go. All right. Done. Okay. Got that out of the way. A little housekeeping. All right. How the hell is everyone today? It is 11:22. Of course, 11:22. We always take a moment to remember perhaps the greatest conspiracy of all time, which was the ritual removal of one John Fitzgerald Kennedy. I am a believer in the actual assassination. There are people that do not believe in the assassination. And at the end of the day, even if they don't believe it and they present evidence that's contrary or otherwise, it doesn't matter, because in the minds of the American people and the rest of the world, it happened. So either way, I'm a believer in the assassination. And I tend to believe that it happened versus not happening. But again, if you don't want to believe in it, that's fine. The same effect occurred. Maybe you can take solace in the fact that everybody else is just a bunch of sheep, which seems to be a very hot trend these days, right? It's a very hot trend. You know, oh, you're a sheep. You're a sheep. You're smoking hopium. You're a hopium dealer. And I ran into this on Twitter, and it was so fascinating, right? I think I talked about this maybe on 15. I don't know, but David Icke had accused. He was talking about Tom Cotton, and Tom Cotton is clearly deeply Israel first. Nobody's going to deny that, right? Nobody's going to deny it. Nobody. And Icke says, well, what do you know? Another one of Trump's appointees, and blah, 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 right? So David Icke has been on this rampage on Twitter for, I don't know, it's been going on for a while now. And he got it wrong, right? He got it wrong because Tom Cotton is not an appointee to any of the Trump cabinet positions. Now, that said, again, Tom Cotton is clearly deeply Israel first. But David Icke did something that, for someone like him, should be a cardinal sin. And it's called misinformation, right? Like, in that moment, David Icke was a fake news pusher. And so I corrected David Icke on that. And then somebody came in and basically accused me of smoking the hopium. And I'm like, no, I'm not smoking the hopium. I'm pointing out a factual inaccuracy in David Icke's thread. And again, David Icke accuses all these other people of slopping misinformation. That was misinformation. Doesn't excuse Tom Cotton, but what he did is he's using Tom Cotton to build his case. And then, oh, here's another one. This is another one that Trump picked. No, he didn't, David. So now the person who is accusing me of smoking hopium, I say to him, where is the hopium? Right? What I'm doing here is I'm pointing out something that David got wrong. And that anybody who is going to, quote unquote, be in the truth game, right, and state facts, it needs to happen. I get corrected sometimes. Nobody's perfect. And I kept asking him, so just answer my question, yes or no. Did he get it wrong? And is it right on my end to correct him? And he says it's a moot point. And it's like, no, it's not a moot point, right? And this is where we are now. We're in this, fractured, fractalized state of people who are theoretically on the same page. But you get down into this granularity, right? If you're talking astrology, this is going to be Jupiter in Gemini. We're just massive amounts of granularity. That's what Gemini does. Gemini chops things up into little tiny pieces, which will be a transition to our next segment, unfortunately. And then when you get Jupiter, you get a lot more of it, where you just get a lot more of the tiny pieces. So Jupiter is in its detriment in Gemini because its ruler is Sagittarius. And now we have it retrograde. So it's a very interesting process going on with, like, we'll get into a little bit of that with like the Matt Gaetz thing. Oh, by the way, today we're going to have a section where you can call in and you can chime in on your opinion. Tell me what you think about what's happening. Do you think we're on the doorstep of World War III, or has World War III already started and this is the next level of escalation? Are we in World War IV? So you'll have an opportunity to come in here and state your facts and your opinion. So it was just, it's just weird, right? This guy follows me. And I'm like, okay, if you're going to act like this and you're not going to just address the facts and the situation and you're going to say it's a moot point. No, it's not a moot point. Like, there's this overriding urge to get somebody's point of view across, their point of view. And it doesn't really matter. They're just going to steamroll whatever important piece that I believe is important. They don't care. Like, where have we heard that before? Like, that's like, that's your typical boring right versus left, dichotomy paradigm breakdown. It's like you're acting like a fucking silly liberal now. You're not even taking into account the sort of the nexus of the statement, because what David Icke is doing is, it's as bad as somebody, like, he's bearing false witness. That's what he's doing in that moment where he's being incorrect. And if David Icke was a stand-up person and a real truth teller, he would admit that he got it wrong. You may say, well, it's not that big of a deal. No, it is a big deal, because it creates a perception in somebody's head who reads that thread, who isn't really looking at it factually. And then they're basically saying, oh, look, here's another one. Here's another. And that's not to say that Trump, by the way, doesn't have a bunch of Israel firsters in his cabinet. He does. And if you didn't think that was going to happen when he was elected president, where have you been living? Right? Where have you been living? Now, the idea here would be, okay, well, we'll throw Miriam Adelson. We'll throw her a few, right? This year, this year, this year, this year. But then, potentially we'll balance it out by having a few other appointees that may not necessarily be at the same level as, the slobber knockers like Mike Huckabee or Stefanik or, the people, they're slobber knockers. But if you voted for Trump, and a lot of you I know did, you knew going into this that he was going to have to deal with the Israel thing, and he had to deal with Miriam Adelson, and he had to deal with probably the Mercers and a number of other people who are clearly pro-Israel, right? If you didn't know that going in, where were you in 2020 when it was? But let's be honest here. If you looked at Biden's administration, I mean, my God, it's chock full of dual citizens. So it doesn't really matter, right, who gets elected. The one thing that I've always said about Trump, and I know I sound like a broken record, he's disruptive. And that's the one thing that we can count on is disruption. So if you want to just go fully baked, neoliberal, Bolshevik, corporocratic, democratic, progressive social management system, then Harris and Waltz are perfect, right? They're China West. This is the other side of the coin. You're getting the other side of the coin. You're getting the nationalist kind of side of the coin with Trump, right? And there's always Jared Kushner lurking in the background. So, if you didn't have any, I didn't have any illusions. But as Americans, we get to have the right to question. Doesn't matter who's president. We get the right to question. We have the right to question, at least for now, who's been hired, why they've been hired, and any policy moving forward. Doesn't matter who's in office. It could be Trump, it could be Harris, it could be Biden, it could be Mickey Mouse. It doesn't matter. This is our right. We get to question it. And if there's something we don't like, we can talk about it, at least for now. And I'm going to take you on a tour of Twitter. Fascinating tour of Twitter from last night. I'm going to show you the psychological campaign that's being waged on Twitter right now, and it has to do with Israel. But before I go there, let me get the sponsorship out of the way and talk about True Hemp Science. Let me do a little quick check-in with chat, and then I'm going to transition to another part of the show, which is, if you've been following the last 3 episodes on Rumble, it's going to tie into that, particularly yesterday's episode. So over on Rumble, I did 3 episodes on, first of all, it started with B4, right? The whole B4 thing, which has its roots in Korea, very fringe movement in Korea. But then it comes to the United States, and the B4 movement is very extreme. It started with these 2 Korean women, and they don't want to reproduce, right? They're kind of anti-patriarchy, anti-male, and there are certain social rituals that they won't engage in. And so that comes to this country, and you see a bunch of liberal women who have shaved their hair, and they vow never to have sex again or procreate, and they have gone so far as even talk about poisoning men and all this shit, right? So the first show, which was on Tuesday, that's where we went, and it went all the way back to the roots of the family and the agrarian model of the family where everything was, for the most part, a cohesive unit, particularly the woman's role in the family. And I talked about how women weren't like, if you were starting, I don't know, a lot of you already heard this, but if you were starting a homestead, like the most important thing with your homestead or your farm or your ranch or whatever you were starting was that the person you were doing it with could do two things: one, bear children, and the other, work their ass off and basically hold up their end of the domestic deal, right? Didn't really matter how like, if they looked great, right? Functionality was way more important than form. Function over form. Now, through the years, and really pretty rapidly after that, we're talking about maybe 35, 40 years, like the catalogs come into play, and all of a sudden, form starts to make its way into this idea of securing a mate, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we started there. We went through this whole sort of evolutionary process with women, second wave feminism, right? On Wednesday, we got into men. And we basically did the same thing with men, and men, and kind of starting in that kind of, American agrarian pioneer stock world, where men did a lot of their own things, like to put up their own fences, they smithed, whatever, right? And if you couldn't do it, you would do it and you would barter with other people. But at the onset of the second industrial revolution, what happens? Men eventually wind up leaving the farm or the ranch, and they essentially take these industrial jobs, which in many ways begins to mirror some of the things that were done, on their property, right? So there's skill sets that are transferable, and eventually leads to what I call the administrative or the ministerial class, where men populate the non-production or non-construction jobs, and that's all about management and accounting and finance and advertising and marketing and banking, and that's a whole other iteration, right? So we went through all that on Wednesday, and on Thursday, sort of the synthesis of both men and women and where they are now, and the remoralization of men, so that men can feel great about being American and go off and fight in a war. Right. So that, I'm just setting the stage for when we get to the next. And the thing that I brought up is this idea that women, young women now, get into Tinder and they swipe right or whatever, and they find somebody who they think has money, and they're generally older, and it's disrupted this ability for young people to have a relationship and share intimacy and have commitment, which is the foundation of starting a family. That's all been disrupted. So you have 19, 20-year-olds that wind up hooking up with 30, 31, 32, 33-year-olds. And those men, by the way, generally have no desire to have a long-term relationship with these women. Every now and then it happens, right? I'm going to share a story with you that one of my clients has a direct connection with. And I'm not going to say what the connection is. That has nothing to do with the people that are involved in the story. I'm going to share a story with you after I talk about True Hemp Science that is 4B. Thank you, Joan. The 4B movement, not the B4, 4B, that exactly reaches into the heart of what I was talking about yesterday. And it is the epitome of the dark, shadowy side of this transaction between young women and older men. I'll get into that in a minute. But before I do, let's bring up some True Hemp Science right here. There you go. So, of course, True Hemp Science, besides myself, Robert Phoenix at robertphoenix.com, is the main sponsor of the show. And True Hemp Science is your one-stop shop for all products CBD. Last night, I had myself a little sleep gummy before I went to bed. Really good. The thing with the sleep gummies, you have to space them out, right? You could go maybe about 4 nights with the sleep gummy. You need to take a break. It's like anything, because our bodies acquire a tolerance. So maybe you take a few days of melatonin and theanine, right? And you come back to the sleep gummy. And the good thing about the sleep gummy is what goes on in your head, right, with these neuroreceptors that are very open to cannabinoids, right? And they do something to your brain, which is actually very beneficial. It's almost like a little bit of a reset, right? So that's one of the reasons why they're very effective and can be very helpful at night. Anyway, if you spend $100 or more and type in 15MINS, you will get a goodie bag, and you'll get some gummies and a little pack. And I don't know how many of the tincture bottles Chris has given away, but you'll get at least one. And he's pretty generous when it comes to the goodie bag. So 15MINS, truehempscience.com. The great thing about this too is you support him, local business, right? This is an American mainstream, Main Street business. CBD has become mainstream. Imagine that. 10 years ago, people were fighting tooth and nail for hemp. By the way, the fight was being waged by Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell in Kentucky. We can thank them. Mitch McConnell did one really good thing. He helped get hemp across the finish line because they knew that the farmers in Kentucky would have to replace their tobacco crops at some point. So they were looking at them and planning for that day, right? Anyway, $150 gets you free shipping. There's always a 30-day money-back guarantee. You support Chris. You support the show. You support your body, mind, spirit. Everybody wins. All right. So let's go back to this story that I'm about to share with you. Now, I'm going to give you fair warning. If you have a hard time with grisly details, you may want to skip the next 5 minutes, 10 minutes of the show. If you don't have a problem with grisly details, then buckle in, because I'm going to share with you a very dark tale that is connected to the exact same thing that I was talking about yesterday. And ultimately, I believe it's a symbol. And once we talk about this, I'll share with you what I think the symbol is. All right, so let's get into the story here. So you have been warned. Wisconsin man accused of killing dismembering woman while on a date. A severed leg, a foot, and a piece of flesh were found separately after 19-year-old Sharday Robinson disappeared. Okay, so she worked at something called Pizza Shuttle, right? And here's the story. Authorities relied on text messages, witnesses, security video, and phone tracking data. Now, put all that together as well. That's a very interesting point of all this, right? They have all these different tools that they can use to track you down, right? Not necessarily a bad thing. But they're also like tools where if somebody has a profile, right? Like we're kind of like, edging the pre-crime a little bit of a different discussion, but those are the bones for something like pre-crime. Anyway, let's keep going. And dismembering a Milwaukee woman with whom he was on a date, court records show. Maxwell Anderson, 33, interesting number, also of Milwaukee, is charged with first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, and arson in the slaying of Sharday, we're going to call her Sharday, Robinson, 19. The two went on a date April 1st, the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office said in a criminal complaint last week. A severed leg found the next day has been preliminarily identified as belonging to Robinson. The complaint says the right leg with painted toes was found near a 100-foot bluff by the water's edge in Ormond Park. A woman who identified herself as Robinson's grandmother said Wednesday afternoon that she was too distraught to talk about the teenager. No one else with Robinson's family could be reached for comment. Anderson remains at the Milwaukee County Jail in lieu of a $5 million bail. According to jail and court records, a preliminary hearing is scheduled for Monday. Anderson's lawyer could not immediately be reached for comment Wednesday afternoon. His relatives could not be reached. Could you imagine being that guy's lawyer and having to defend him? According to the complaint, someone reported finding the leg around 5:30 p.m. on April 2nd. The leg was severed just below the hip socket and appeared to have been sawn off. The toes on the feet had pink nail polish. The leg did not appear to be decomposing, the complaint says. One of Robinson's friends went to Milwaukee police that evening to report that Robinson was not on her phone and she did not show up at work. The friend said Robinson's last known activity was a post on Snapchat the previous night about how she was at a bar, according to the complaint. The city's fire department found Robinson's 2020 Honda Civic the morning of April 2nd with heavy interior damage from a fire, the complaint alleges. 4 days later, on April 6th, Milwaukee police found a human foot adjacent to train tracks and human flesh in the same area where the car had been discovered. The foot and the right leg found days earlier appeared to have belong to the same person because of skin tone, size, and having matching pink nail polish, the complaint said. Yes, I love seafood. Investigators also focused on forensic data before Anderson was charged. Evidence included text messages Robinson and Anderson exchanged on April 1st. Using those texts, along with tracking data from Robinson's phone, investigators pieced together a timeline of what they believe were her final hours. In text messages, Robinson and Anderson discussed meeting at a seafood restaurant where Anderson used to work. Robinson responded, "Yes, I love seafood," the complaint said. Video from the restaurant showed the pair eating and talking for about an hour before they moved to a bar. Officials said, according to the complaint, video from the bar shows Robinson exiting her car while Anderson leaves from the passenger side. They remained at the bar until about 9:20 p.m. when the data from Robinson's phone played near Anderson's residence, the complaint says. Her phone remained in that area until about 12:45 a.m. Investigators used a location sharing app on the victim's phone to track its whereabouts for the next 4 hours until the battery died. Robinson's phone appeared to be in the park where the severed leg was found. That was from 3 a.m. to about 4:30 a.m., April 2nd, the complaint says. So this is horrific. How did all of this start? It started with a dating app. And look at the disparity between the ages. She's 19, he's 33. Now, how do I know it started with a dating app? It's because I know somebody who is very close to this case. And they know people that knew her. And those people were telling her, what are you doing on this app? She was actually warned about using. Now, I don't know what app it was. Could have been Tinder. Who knows? But that's how they met. That's how they hooked up. And she's 19. He's 33. Pre-app, first of all, the 33-year-old pre-app is usually married. Right? Usually married. Probably has kids. Right? Not fishing around for a 19-year-old who wants to date up and doesn't want to date somebody who is relatively their same age. Maybe a difference of a couple of years, right? Maybe a reasonable person for her to date might be around 24, 25. That's what, 6 years? It's not bad. Right? Still kind of close. Usually about a 3-year gap either way. Well, 3 years on one side, maybe 1 or 2 in the other. So this whole thing has disrupted the natural sequence that people usually go through, right? They marry, they meet, they mate, They meet, they marry, they meet, they marry, they mate. The 3 M's. And it's usually fairly young. It's how the game used to work. Now we have this unfortunate phenomenon where young women are trying to date up, right? For whatever reason. Young men could be awkward. Many times they are. They're not really, all that sexually sophisticated, right? They're not always psychologically sophisticated. These older guys have had some time to sort of, work on some things. And then there's the economic factor. Older men, theoretically, now I don't know about this guy. Seems like she's driving the car. But theoretically, older men tend to be more financially secure. Younger men are still trying to figure it out, right? And now, for younger men, it's even harder to figure it out for a number of different social reasons. So this is the phenomena that happens on these dating apps. Young women tend to date up and considerably up. And this is what she did. Now, I think I tend to think of things as symbols, and sometimes when you do that, it can be deeply depersonalizing. And this is like really fucking tragic. By the way, like what goes on in Wisconsin, like that's some what's his name? What the fuck? I'm spacing out on the guy. You know what I'm talking about. The Wisconsin killer, the dude that chopped people up, right? And put their body parts in his freezer and shit. And eventually winds up in, that's another Wisconsin thing. Anyway, it's a symbol, right? It's a symbol that this application of technology has reached its ultimate end. It's reached its ultimate gory and absolutely horrific end. This is where the worst fear of anybody going through a dating app is that, even though it's probably, somewhere back here, I'm not going to listen to that. But that's the absolute worst fear, right? That you wind up with somebody who is a fucking psychopath and for whatever reason wants to, literally start and end the relationship on the same night permanently. And it speaks to, in a lot of ways, the sickness that has crept in to the social system that has created all of this. And we could just keep going further if we wanted to, right? This like empowerment of women where OnlyFans is celebrated. And men have their own issues with that too, right? OnlyFans would not exist if men didn't keep pumping the quarters into the meter or pumping the quarters into the slot, right? It wouldn't exist if men didn't do that. So men have a piece in all of this as well. Men could say, I'm not doing that. But these are usually men who have not dated or have given up on dating, and they have some weird kind of power over the woman in that moment, where if you pump enough money in there, the woman will do certain things. Like this weird psychological game going on here with that world in general. It's a power exchange. So it's just very odd and synchronistic that I went through all of this, culminating on Thursday and actually having a conversation with the person who, again, is very closely connected to that event. Again, no relative, right, but very closely connected to that event. And I got the details on it and that's how I know it was a dating app. So we're talking about this, and then lo and behold, this is the worst fucking example, or maybe the best example, of the dangers that these technological applications have had in our lives. Not good. Not good. You know what else is not good about this? The way that we used to meet people. Right now, you don't have to leave your fucking house. Just swipe right, right? You used to meet people in random places. Like if you look who's here, it's Jasper. Like if you go to a record store, right? You'd be flipping through the bins, and all of a sudden, there's somebody nearby, and you pick up an album, you look at it, and they're like, "Oh, I'm really into that group. I love these guys. That's a really good album." Well, what do you know? Now you're having a conversation, or it could be at a bookstore, right? Now, fuck, you could even meet somebody at a grocery store, but now they have Instacart. They'll just bring the shit to your car, right? So we used to have these social situations where the potential for meeting people was much greater. And what's really important about this is that when you're in a field with another person, right, you can get a sense as to, at a certain level, if you're, attuned as to who they are, right? You're sharing a field, you're sharing an energetic field with them. And it's like, wow, there's chemistry here. Or, wow, I better turn around and, excuse myself and turn around and walk out the door, right? These things would occur in physical spaces. And when you're doing that on an app, you're not in the physical space of somebody, who's going to, bust out a power tool, after, dinner, drinks and dinner. Like you're not in there. You're not doing that. Like it's all synthetic and simulated. You're not even having a real encounter with a human. So that physical thing is really important, right? That's where information gets shared on a nonverbal level with people. Oh, just here, we got to bring him in here. Look who's here. There he is. The man. The man is here. The astrological cat. No peachy. All right. So I just wanted to round that off from the last 3 shows that took place on Rumble. And if you haven't seen those shows, and a lot of your parents, these are the challenges that your children are going through right now. And perhaps one of the mods can put the link to 15 Minutes of Flame channel on Rumble. That'd be appreciative. All right, let's get into the hot topic. So I'm going to take you into Twitter, and I'm going to show you, for what is all intents and purposes, a massive, absolutely massive and coordinated information push on Twitter like I have never seen before. And then we'll get into some of the Trump stuff, and then we'll open the lines. And if you guys want to call in and chime in, it'd be great. All right, so I'm gonna pop over to Twitter now, and I'm gonna show you what was cascading like a waterfall of stinky shit last night. So let me do this. Let me get into my bookmarks. I bookmarked a bunch of these. So get ready. It's like the messaging from APAC went out, and everybody got the bullet points, and they decided that maybe they could have their own messaging. They can be creative and find their own words. All right. This is what you call a coordinated campaign. Open source intel. I don't know who they are. The ICC, International Criminal Court, right? Isn't that what it is? Is a kangaroo court. Okay, now we're going to get into American politicians here. Senator Tom Tillis, the ICC is an absolute farce. putting Netanyahu in the same class as Putin and warlords like Joseph Kony. This is exactly why America should never recognize its jurisdiction. So who is Senator Tom Willis? So North Carolina, is he a Republican? Probably. So he's in the pocket. Senator John Barrasso. Well, he's just going to retweet Lindsey Graham. The International Corrupt Criminal Court has acted in the most absurd and irresponsible manner possible by issuing arrest warrants against the Prime Minister and former Defense Minister of Israel. Well, there is a serious cloud of allegations hanging over the prosecutor who sought it. So Senator John Barrasso, GOP, Wyoming, right? There we go. Khaled Hassan. Khaled Zakaria. Mark my words, all those politicians who sided with the ICC will face electoral wipeout. Now, he's coming from the other side. Whether here, the UK, Canada, or France, those leaders stand for nothing. They offer their people nothing, and they will soon be nothing. So that's the contrarian point of view, or the other point of view. Let's get back to the others. David Collier, ICC judges. We know that in reality, we don't have jurisdiction, but let's try and arrest the Jews anyway. The ICC is rancid, anti-Semitic, kangaroo court. Oh, Nikki Haley chimes in. Republicans should use their congressional majority to immediately sanction the ICC. Israel has every right to defend itself. Representative Randy Feenstra. The International Criminal Court is a shameful institution. Issuing an arrest warrant for Prime Minister Netanyahu is disgraceful. Israel has a right to defend itself from vicious Hamas terrorists. Who is he? GOP. Conservative Republican, GOP. House Ways and Means Committee. Benny Gantz. This is a guy who has been a rival of Netanyahu in the Knesset. The ICC's decision, moral blindness and shameful stain of historic proportion, will never be forgotten. Michael Chong looks like he's a Canadian. They're not immune to it. The ICC arrest warrants for the former defense minister and the prime minister of Israel are outrageous. The ICC is drawing a false equivalency between a liberal democracy and a terrorist group that attacked the democracy last year. Conservatives stand for Israel's right to what? Defend itself. There it is right there. Leader McConnell, yeah, this is damning, not for Israel, but for the impotent sham court, flaunting its lack of moral clarity as a badge of honor. Isaac Herzog, this is a dark day for justice, a dark day for humanity. Taken in bad faith, the outrageous decision that the ICC has turned universal justice into a universal laughingstock. Oh, Israel's chiming in. And what they're doing is they're propping up the government of Paraguay. Ever been to Paraguay? I haven't either. Not real sure I want to go. A lot of swampland. Anyway, Uruguay is different. The government of the Republic of Paraguay regrets the decision of the International Criminal Court to issue arrest warrants against the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and former Minister of Defense, Yoav Gallant. So they have to translate. They're translating for Paraguay. Congressman Jared Moskowitz. Why vey? The ICC turned a blind eye to many atrocities, including Bashar al-Assad's use of chemical weapons. By the way, that was proven to be false, to kill hundreds of thousands of Syrians. But when it comes to Israel defending itself against Hamas, the ICC doesn't hesitate to exercise this anti-Semitic double. These are all happening, one right after the other. This is a coordinated effort. Here you go. John Thune. This is the guy who's got the hammer in the Congress now. Oh, kind of a nice Star David color tie there. A little bit of variegation. The ICC's arrest warrant against Prime Minister Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Gallant is outrageous, unlawful, and dangerous. Do you see how the rhetoric, the language of the rhetoric is like almost matching, word for word, tone for tone, note for note? Leader Schumer should bring a bill to the floor sanctioning the ICC. If he chooses not to act, the new Senate Republican majority next year will. Now, this is the Medvedev missiles. Hanyana Naftali, the International Court of Justice in The Hague, issued arrest warrants. This is not justice, but a political circus. Well, Israel defends its people from Hamas, the world's most brutal, blah, 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 fucking blah. Naftali Bennett, who at one point was actually the prime minister of Israel for a minute, he chimes in, same thing. Bill Ackman, who is agreeing with Mike Pompeo. Outrageous and disgraceful that the ICC is issuing arrest warrants for Israeli leaders, including PM Netanyahu. This is not justice. It rewards Iranian-backed terrorists, period. American leaders should denounce this repugnant action in the anti-Semitic ICC. All right, so let's take a look at Pompeo here. So we can get there. Can't I retweet, get into Pompeo's? Here, let's get into here. Well, let's do a Thune. We'll do a Thune check. Let's see what people have to say. Where is he? Right here. Here, we'll do a little Nikki Haley heat check. Oh, come on. Let's go here. We'll go here. Jackson Hinkle, you are Israel's biggest whore. Gareth Ike, shekels for thin lips. Nimrata, you should be arrested too. You really gave them hell, Nikki. Israel is evil, and so are you to defend them. It's not defense, you bloodthirsty psychopath. In other words, everyone else is wrong, and Israel, Jews, and America are right. Yeah, this sounds like the guy who gets kicked out of 109 bars and still demands it's not his fault. An occupying power cannot justify acts of violence or use military force against the population it's legally obligated to protect. In short, fuck you. Israel does not have the right to protect itself from the people it occupies. Don't like resistance? End the occupation. Americans have every right to see their tax money spent in their own country. Let Israel murder children with its own money. Ooh. The warrants are for Netanyahu and Gallant as individuals. What are you talking about? Do you ever worry about Americans? Where was this mindset when they went after Putin? Hypocrite owned by Israel, of course. We knew it. All AIPAC bots going to be active to defend Demon Netanyahu, committing Holocaust against my skin, you ugly bitch. How many times you sell your ass and your conscience for power's sake? Disgusting. Yep. Tell us Israel pays you without telling us. Move to Israel, you piece of shit, degenerate adulteress. Bibi the baby, Rick Wiles chiming in here. Bibi the baby killer must be in prison for life. He slaughtered tens of thousands of innocent children. You are wicked for defending him. Oh, shut up. No amount of cucking by you will get you another bomb to sign. Why the fuck is this bitch still here? Are you sure? Are you blinded by lobbyist money? Of course she is. I'm just going through all of this. Hamas urges ICC to cancel arrest warrants against its leaders. Looks like you're agreeing with Hamas, bitch. That's great. You wonder why? Well, who's running Hamas? That should give you a clear indication right there. Dr. Jack Borenstein, boy, he's sticking out like a fucking sore thumb, isn't he? All of Congress should do it. And I believe they can. Let's see how people respond to Dr. Jack. Jew, your Holocaust never happened because all the Goyim have to be your slaves, right? Rat filth. Wow. That's so for whatever 14 comments did not make it onto that thread. Zionist Shiawala wants a sardine. That's kind of funny, actually. Humanity should ask the ICC to issue a warrant for you. Do you see where this is going? Like, they've created a very interesting lack of censorship on Twitter. And people are quite emboldened to let these people know just exactly how they feel. You're supposed to represent America, not war criminals from another country. The arrest warrant should have included genocide apologists like you as well. I mean, this just goes on and on and on. Why does the GOP support convicted felon at real Donald Trump? Yeah. Which, please, and as an occupying power, Israel cannot violate the rights of those under occupation, something Israel has done repeatedly. Hiding behind the title of excuse Israel's right to defend itself doesn't change the fact that their actions cross a clear line into clear violations of international law, the rights of the Palestinians. It's time to stop ignoring the genocide. These people are on the fucking payroll. You, Nikki, are an AIPAC paid treasonous bastard and genocidal cheerleader. Another Israel whore barking. How about just a plain old fuck you? There you go. Now, Matt Fleming says the Republican Party is part of an ongoing conspiracy to forfeit our global economic, political, cultural, and military leadership to Russia and China. Israel is the North Korea of the Western world, and the U.S. needs to ratify the Rome Statute. Whatever that means. You disgusting hag. I'm so happy you got snubbed by Trump. You're a loser, and you'll always be a loser, no matter how much money Israel gives you. This is like 99% to 1%, or 99.5% to 0.5%. One day you will answer for your actions. Nothing can stop what is coming. The truth always comes out. There is still time to repent, or there is time to double down and aid Lucifer's own synagogue on earth with even more. Choose wisely or buckle up, you war pig. And it goes on and on and on. Thank you, Nikki, for always standing with Israel. Thank you for your support and standing with us. Land thief, shameless. Standing with Israel, supporting genocide without an ounce of humanity in your soul at Nikki Haley, who signed missiles that murdered innocent children. The day will come when justice will be served to all those that are complicit in this genocide. Rotten hell, you fake Christian. There you go. Look at that. It's getting spicy. It is getting spicy. And I could go through every single one of those posts and their replies, and you'll get the same thing. 99.5% versus 0.5%. And this is a coordinated marketing, public relations defense of Israel. And it's all coming from AIPAC, right? It's all coming from AIPAC. You know who you won't find towing the AIPAC line? Thomas Massie. He's not in there. You won't see. Let's do a quick Thomas Massie. Let's see if he has anything to say about it. Let's see what's going on with Thomas, who's a good follow on Twitter, by the way. Let's see if he's got anything to say. Looks like he's steering clear. He's steering clear. Of the controversial statements. Look at that. You got a little Massey RFK photo op. Congrats to my friend Donald Robert Kennedy. And thank you to @RealDonald for choosing him. Let's make America healthy again. I'm a Massey guy. Right here, let me show you. I'll show you the picture. So there he is with RFK Jr. And there he is with Donald Trump. However, he is not chiming in on the shameful claim that Bibi Netanyahu and Mr. Gallant are war criminals. But he's also not supporting it either. On his way out, Joe Biden is trying to forgive $4.65 billion of debt Ukraine owes America's taxpayers. I just introduced HJRS 224 to stop this America Last policy for taking effect. All right. So there you go. A massively coordinated public relations and marketing campaign to smear the ICC and validate Israel's right to defend itself. Now, this kind of leads into our next topic of conversation here, which is where we are with Trump, his cabinet picks, and most recently, Matt Gaetz tapping out and Pam Bondi being lined right up. Like, they didn't waste a minute, right? It was instant Bondi. And Pam Bondi is troubling. Like, I really didn't know a lot about Pam Bondi. I had heard her name, but she is. Matt Gaetz would have been much more interesting. Much, much more interesting. And I think it was Mary Lee. I don't know if Mary Lee's in chat, but Mary Lee put up a really interesting Twitter thread that probably most of you have seen. And it goes back to this guy by the name of Jacob Greenberg, who was a tax collector. I mean, talk about a cliche fucking role. I'm sorry. I'm kind of drifting into ADL territory here, right? But it's like, you got a guy named Greenberg who's a tax collector. It's just a little cliche. Anyway, the story is this guy Greenberg is a crook, an out and out fucking crook in Florida. And he's, again, meeting a young woman on a dating app, happens to be 17 years old. So in order to not be liable for having sex with a minor, not only is he the tax collector, but he's also the guy who's in charge ultimately of printing driver's licenses. So somehow he gets the driver's license people to make a fake ID for his little 17-year-old girlfriend. So now he's not responsible, right, for or breaking the law for having sex with a minor. But he's doing all this other crazy shit. He's buying drugs. He's taking, Pinellas County, I think, in Florida, and he's taking their money and he's investing in crypto. I mean, he's just a fucking crook. And eventually he gets busted. So what does he do? He says, I've got the goods on somebody who is a member of Congress, and they're having sexual congress with a minor, and it happens to be Matt Gaetz. And Matt Gaetz is probably the victim of one of these fake licenses. Like he's having sex. Now, look, here's what I'm going to say about Matt Gaetz. It gets right back into this, Tinder world. Like, Matt Gaetz, why don't you try and develop a relationship with somebody who's closer to your age? Now, I get it. Sometimes the age gap is not necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. However, there's degrees and demarcations where it goes from here to here. Right here, not too bad. Here, now we're having a different discussion. So I'm not necessarily going to give Matt Gaetz a pass because, like, oh, look, I'm shagging an 18-year-old or I'm shagging a 19-year-old. Man, makes me feel young again, which is really what the ritual is all about. But that said, it's almost like entrapment. So this guy turned state's evidence against Matt Gaetz, bearing false witness. It's a big part of this investigation that goes on with Gaetz. And it's this Jacob Greenberg guy. Right? So whatever else is going on in Matt Gaetz's world, now he's open to more scrutiny, right? Now, some people will say this is 5D chess. They wanted to get Matt Gaetz out there so they could identify their enemies of the deep state. I'm sorry. If you don't know who the fuck your enemies are in the deep state after 8 years, my confidence in either Trump or his people's ability to finger them and essentially do things in general is like reduced, right? Like it is dehydrated. That's what it is. It's like fucking dehydrated. So I don't really think that that's the truth. I think they know who they're dealing with. I think they know who the quote unquote enemies of the state are. It's easy, right? It's like Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, Thune. Come on now, please. Now, if you wanted to go 2 or 3 levels deeper to get those people to expose themselves, that's a different story, right? 3 levels deeper is different because you want to go 3 levels deeper. You want to get to the root, right? But to use that as a justification, no, that doesn't fly. To use it as a setup so that now they're going to pass Bondi through because they've already made a big stink out of Gaetz and she's a woman, so they're going to get what they want. Well, you can make a case for that. But who is Pam Bondi? Let's just take a look at Pam Bondi. Right. So she looks like she just stepped off the set of Fox News. She's a Scorpio, born November 17th. Pamela Jo Bondi. So she's a Scorpio, and she's born in 1965, which is the year of the snake. So Pam Bondi, she's got a lot of chi. Let's get into this for a little bit here. So she was one of his lawyers in this first impeachment trial. Her hometown is Temple Terrace. Her father, Joseph Bondi, was a city council member, the mayor of Temple Terrace. She is a graduate of C. Leon King High School in Tampa. She received a Bachelor of Arts with a major in criminal justice from the University of Florida in 1987 and a Juris Doctor from Stetson University College of Law in 1990. She was a member of the Delta 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 sorority as an undergraduate student. What's Delta 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 all about? One of the Greeks. Their colors are silver, gold, and cerulean blue. Symbol 3 triangles, stars, and crescent dolphin secondary. Looking very Islamic here. Am I right? This is very Islamic looking. Famous Delta Delta Deltas: Sarah Ida Shaw, Eleanor Dorcas Pond, Florence Isabel Stewart, Isabel Morgan Breed, whoever they are. The inspiration came from ancient Egypt, Greek mythology, Hindu, and astronomy, reflecting Shaw's varied interests. I guess they're the founders. Look at that. It's flower of life. I gotta say, it's better than Kamala Harris's shitty colors and her sorority. Tri-Delta are silver, gold, and cerulean blue, made famous in the Devil Wears Prada. Well, the pearls its jewel. The sorority recognizes the pansy as its official flower and the pine tree as its official tree. How about that? All right. Let's get back to Pam Bondi. Let's see. She was on MSNBC, worked for Fox News. She prosecuted former Major League Baseball player Dwight Gooden in 2006 for violating the terms of probation and substance abuse. Bondi also prosecuted defendants in Martin Anderson's death. Okay. So she's a public prosecutor. Elections, tenure, blah, blah, blah. Fundraising controversies, Trump donation to Bondi PAC. So we have a fiduciary relationship here with Pam Bondi, going all the way back to 2013. Interesting. In 2013, Bondi also received criticism following a campaign donation from Donald Trump. Prior to the donation, Bondi had received at least 22 fraud complaints regarding Trump University. A spokesperson for Bondi announced that her office was considering joining a lawsuit initiated by Eric Schneiderman, the Attorney General of New York, regarding tax fraud, potential charges against Trump. 4 days later, a political action committee established by Bondi to support her reelection, I guess it's called And Justice for All, received a $25,000 donation from Donald Trump Foundation. Bondi subsequently declined to join the lawsuit against Trump University. Both Bondi and Trump defended the propriety of the donation. Okay. So she got into a little bit of hot water. September 2016, the IRS determined that the donation to Bondi's PAC violated laws against political contributions from nonprofit organizations and ordered Trump to pay a fine for the contribution. Trump was also required to reimburse the foundation for the sum that had been donated to Bondi. Neither Bondi nor her PAC were fined or criminally charged. November 2019, Trump was ordered by a New York State court to close down the foundation and pay $2 million in damages for misusing it, including the illegal donation to Bondi. So they go all the way back to 2016. Her personal life, roots, she's Italian descent. She married Garrett Barnes in 1990. The couple divorced 22 months after marriage. Then she married Scott Fitzgerald. They divorced in 2002. She was engaged to Greg Henderson in 2012. Not a great marriage track record, but a lot of us don't. Pam Bondi is incredibly pro-Israel. Incredibly pro-Israel. Pam Bondi is also not that friendly with the Second Amendment. Not that friendly. But she's another loyalist, right? Now, some people think that that Trump is Pam Bondi, Israel. That Trump is stocking his cabinet with loyalists. Well, that's true. And if I was Trump, I'd do the same thing as well. Jewish Insider. Here we go. Trump's new AG nominee, Pam Bondi, called for crackdowns on pro-Hamas protesters. Former Democratic Rep Robert Wexler, when it comes to the interests of the Jewish community and having an attorney general that will fight for the protection of the Jewish community, we could not do better than Pam Bondi. President Donald Trump announced on Thursday that he intends to nominate former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi to serve as Attorney General, hours after former Rep Matt Gaetz declined the nomination amid increasing scrutiny of allegations of past sexual misconduct and sex trafficking. Now I don't want your newsletter. Can I get rid of it? Thank you. Bondi served as Florida's Attorney General from 2011 to 2019 as a longtime fixture in Trump's orbit in the conservative media world, including serving as one of his attorneys in his first impeachment trial and taking a leading role in his efforts to contest the 2020 election results. Well, that was a fumble. Gaetz' nomination raised red flags in the Jewish community, given his checkered record on anti-Semitism. But Bondi is likely to received more positively. There you go. I just highlighted the reason why Matt Gaetz is not going to be the Attorney General. It's right there. Now they're going to get somebody that, boy, do they love. In October 2023 appearance on Newsmax, Bondi expressed concern about anti-Semitism, particularly on college campuses, and delivered comments that suggested she'll take an aggressive approach to anti-Israel protests on campuses. Oh, so they can't. This is just such bullshit. I'm sorry. The thing that's really the most troubling to me are these students at universities in our country, whether they're here as Americans or if they're here on student visas. They're out there saying, I support Hamas. Bondi said, frankly, they need to be taken out of our country, and the FBI needs to be interviewing them right away. This is just one of these false dichotomies. It's like you can support the Palestinian people and not support Hamas. Right? I mean, please. Child, please. She also called for revoking student visas from non-citizens involved in such activity and reimposing Trump travel ban targeting several Muslim-majority countries. It's truly, truly heartbreaking to see what's happening to all of our Jewish friends in this country, Bondi continued, by really just, I think, a lot of ignorant kids and students and people who don't understand Hamas equals terrorism. Man, she's going to sail through. She is going to sail through. No problem. No problem. Pam Bondi, Second Amendment. She's not all that friendly with the Second Amendment either. Let's see what we got here. Look at this, Tampa Bay Times. For gun rights groups, Florida's new attorney general is no Pam Bondi, and that's a good thing. Ashley Moody had the kind of week that makes groups like Florida Carry thankful. She's attorney general now. Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody had the kind of week that overshadowed her predecessor, Pam Bondi. This is from 5 years ago, by the way. On Friday last week, Moody interjected herself in the gun debate by recommending that the Florida Supreme Court reject a proposed constitutional amendment that would ban assault rifles in the state. On Tuesday, Moody announced she would appeal a circuit judge's ruling that struck down a state law that threatens penalties such as removal of office for local officials who approve gun regulations. Although Bondi's 8 years as Attorney General were characterized by embroiling her office in the most divisive political and cultural issues of the day, opposing Obamacare, supporting gay marriage ban, her record on guns, at least to some groups, was mixed. I've got no love for Pam Bondi, said Eric Friday, the general counsel for Florida Carry, a gun rights group that makes the National Rifle Association look mild at times. In only a week, however, Moody showed Friday that he has a friend in Florida's top law enforcement officer. Ms. Moody is doing nothing more or less than standing by her statement she made on the campaign trail, Friday said, and I think that's refreshing. But for those on the other side of the debate, they see politics, not the law behind the positions taken by Moody, and by extension, all the resources as the head of the largest law firm in the state. You've got to be silly not to believe that her Republican Party politics are at play here, said Ben Pallara, a political consultant working on behalf of Ban Assault Weapons Now. So this is all in contrast to Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi was not 2A friendly in Florida. Not 2A friendly. Let's go to the next page. National Rifle Association versus Bondi. They're fucking suing her. What to know about Pam Bondi? Tampa Bay Times. Let's just take a look at this. That was the same newspaper, by the way, that just gave us that last breakdown. Enjoy one more article for free. Okay, I don't really need this. But you get what I'm saying, right? You understand what you can see the picture I'm painting. Pam Bondi, anti-First Amendment. Pam Bondi, not real friendly to the Second Amendment. And this is who the new pick for Attorney General is now. Yeah. I think it's a bit disappointing. Matt Gaetz has some baggage, but at the very least, he was interesting, right? He was interesting. And if particular groups are pissed at him, right, there's probably a pretty good chance that he has an I don't give a fuck attitude. Pam Bondi seems like somebody who could be owned pretty easily. So how do I feel about it? Not great. Not great. And this is yet another pick who seems to be right in alignment with all those people who were posting on Twitter and essentially doing the legwork. They were the ground soldiers for AIPAC and denouncing the ICC. So here's the upside to all of this. And we're going to draw on some astrology with the upside. The upside is that we are now in Pluto in Aquarius. And if you know anything about Aquarius, it operates through inversion, right? We look to the opposite sign, which is Leo. Leo does not operate through inversion. Leo operates through direct transmission. You get the sun's rays, right? That is sort of the operating system for Leo. It is direct. Like Leos are supposed to be forthright, hard on their sleeve. That's how Leo's supposed to operate. As a astrological principle, it is direct. The sun in Leo, right, is in its own sign. It's a benefic. Now, Aquarius is in detriment to Leo, right? So that direct energy, that sunlight, that life-giving force, right? In contrast to Aquarius, ruled by Uranus, is indirect. It's indirect. And one transmits directly, the other works through a type of inversion, right? So how we look at where things are headed with Pluto and Aquarius, when you get a group of people like that rogues gallery I was scrolling through, that the kickback, when I say kickback, I'm talking about like when you recoil and fire a gun, not kickback in political terms, but the kickback or the recoil of their actions is significant, right? Because this is how these things are going to go down with Pluto and Aquarius. You just saw 99.5% of the people in those threads that were like, big middle finger, fuck you. And when things go hard, or when institutions go hard, or where people go hard, right? And especially in that setting, because that was a group, right? That was very Aquarian, by the way. They're using Twitter. They're one, but they're many, right? So they're in the Pluto and Aquarius mode, but there's no guarantee that it is going to have a direct effect. And in fact, it will probably have an indirect effect. And if people, it's kind of like reverse psychology, where you kind of use it on a 6-year-old, and you get them to do something by reversing the options. Like if they wanted to promote Israel and promote their ability to protect themselves, what they really, really want to do here is that they would want to, and this sounds completely and utterly just illogical, but if they really wanted to be successful, they'd promote the Palestinian people. That's what they would do, right? That's what they would do. They would promote the Palestinian people. Why? Because Israel, the lobby, and these people who are promoting them would begin to win the hearts and minds of people, right? They'll be like, whoa, look at this. Man, this is a 180. This is a sea change. Now, would they actually have to do that? The answer is like unequivocally, no, they wouldn't have to. But it would be better for them if they did. Because, again, we're talking about inversion and this indirect action. So now all their critics could no longer be critics. They would say, wow, look what's going on here. Right? So in the case of the ICC, with Netanyahu and Yoav, whatever the fuck his name is, Gallant, Would they have to surrender themselves? No. But they could say, in light of the judgment of the ICC against myself and Prime Minister Gallant, we understand how they could come to this conclusion based on everything that's on the surface. We understand how they could come to this conclusion. And we welcome the ICC to come to Israel and walk with us. Right? And we'll also invite members of the Palestinian community to walk with us. Right? I mean, he could do that. Now, would they ever do it? I don't know. But he could do that. And then moving forward, like, you would want to invert the rhetoric. They don't know that. They're just running a program. But by running the program, what's going to happen? They're going to wake more people up. All that AIPAC money that's switched on the bots, who really are the people in Congress and the Senate, yada, 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 right? They're going to just run the program and they're going to wake people up. So in a lot of ways, it's probably the best thing that they could do for people that are opposed to genocide and what? Dual citizenship in government and this weird merger between these two so-called nation states. You could go a couple layers deeper, right? And it's like, oh, here the traitors are. You want to smoke out the traitors, just keep doing that. Just keep running the program. And who knows? Maybe this is 500D chess. And this is exactly what Donald Trump wants to do, right? And all of a sudden, he'll go into the temple and he'll flip over the tables of the merchants inside the temple. That's a big question mark and a big maybe. I'm just telling you that this is not a winning strategy on their part. It is not. Like, they are not going to win over the hearts and minds of people in the United States. They may get a few people who say, yeah, sure, I stand with Israel. But I guarantee you, just based on the current astrological alignment of Pluto coming into Aquarius, it's not going to work. In fact, it will be counterproductive, and it will do the exact opposite of what they are intending or what they would like to happen or intending to do. It's bottom line. So just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. This is the one thing, right? There are going to be unintended consequences of this inversion that are taking place at that level, right? And the interesting thing is that we're networked now. I was having a really interesting discussion with a friend of the show, AJ, last night. And he said, it was really interesting when you were reading off the lottery numbers yesterday. We did this little fake thing. Like, I was like pulling the lottery numbers out of my head. And he was guessing them, or was at least one off for the first three numbers. Dr. Joan was doing the same thing. She was right there and she was one off. So it's like, okay, well, this is interesting, right? We have a person in California who's like kind of on the same wavelength numerically, person here in Texas, kind of on the same wavelength numerically. Well, what are we to draw from something like this? Well, I can tell you is that through Pluto and Aquarius, we are going to have more and more experiences of what I would call the real psychic network, right? So we've been laying the tracks for this for years with the internet and collecting sort of like the bits and pieces of a global brain. There's another version of this that is non-digital, right? It happens in the space, right? With who's the mystic? When it happens in the noosphere, right? It happens in the noosphere. The noosphere is where data theoretically is, human data is collected. It's like it's the sum total of our experiences, right? It also relates very much to Jung's collective unconscious. So for me, Pluto and Aquarius, just in that little interaction alone, right? Just in that little interaction alone, to me, Pluto and Aquarius is the beginnings of the human psychic network. This is how we're going to be like connecting with others, and it's going to be undeniable. Of all the signs that rule synchronicity, I think Aquarius and Scorpio are kind of and Gemini. Those three signs are really connected to synchronicity. And for Aquarius, it's Uranian. And it's like, how did this happen? How did this thing happen where these two things are connected in real time in a way that is almost nearly impossible? That's the Uranian sort of ability to kind of have things occur in sort of non-local space simultaneously that aren't predictable. So this sense of Aquarius and this, hold on a second. And the human psychic network is just going to get more and more pronounced. So you don't even have to load up to 99.5% on these Twitter threads or these X threads. It's already happening, right? It's already happening. So we're exchanging information. We're exchanging not just information. We're exchanging thoughts, right? We're exchanging a high level of exchange with others, and it's completely non-local. And that's going to be one of the byproducts of Pluto and Aquarius. I think it's really interesting. Then on the other hand, well, we have the surveillance state and, sort of the lockdown technologies and the rise of the technocracy and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, there's probably a very good chance that we'll see that begin to self-assemble, right? But what is all of that? That's just a shadowy version of this other thing that's happening, for lack of a better term, on an etheric level, because it is happening and it will continue to happen, and it's going to get stronger. Like, we will feel uniquely more connected in a very unusual way with Pluto and Aquarius. The other side of that, however, is that if you're not feeling that, you will feel also more disconnected, because Aquarius is actually quite good at that. It can be very alienating in some ways, and feeling like, well, I'm just not a part of this world, right? I'm trying to fit in somewhere. So I guess what I'm saying here is that don't get freaked out. When you see all this shit start to happen, oh, here it is. Here it is. Told you so. Oh, that's bad. How it all plays out is going to be very different than the intended consequences that these people have mapped out. I'm telling you, it's not going to work according to plan. So if they go hog wild, all in, on a certain type of representation, it's not going to work. It won't work for any number of reasons. One is just by signaling awareness. The other, like, strange shit happens in Aquarius. And then all of a sudden, somebody who's like a really key person or a key, for whatever reason, right? Something scandalous occurs. I'm not even talking about Matt Gaetz, but something scandalous occurs, or they resign immediately, or they have a health crisis, or maybe in the most extreme case, a plane goes down, right? These things will happen. And we are going to have a myriad of what the fuck moments. A myriad of them. Now, there are other consequences to this as well. And by the way, I'm not saying that you shouldn't think of people in a more fraternal sense, because I think we need to do that. This is my opinion. But there are people who will be extremely well intentioned and try to do something like really, really, really good, right? But if it's ideological, it's not going to work. Let me give you an example here of what I'm talking about. While Pam Bondi and all of these quote unquote Israel first people have been appointed and have to go through the ratification process, right? Let me show you something here that is very interesting and gets close to what I'm talking about. Okay. I'm going to show you this right here. Keep in mind, a lot of these appointees, rah, Israel. Robert Kraft, who is the owner of the New England Patriots, a team that has won, 7 Super Bowls? Under his watch and leadership, he has been up to be elected into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and he was denied yesterday or 2 days ago, right? 2 days ago. Let's look at this right here. Robert Kraft reportedly denied entry into Pro Football Hall of Fame again. Robert Kraft will have to wait at least another year to reach the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now, Trump may step in and demand it. The New England Patriots owner has made a concerted push in recent years. He's making the push to be enshrined in Canton, was passed over by the Hall's contributor committee in favor of NFL co-founder Ralph Hay. Kraft was previously a favorite to receive enshrinement, especially with the introduction of the contributor committee. Previously, Kraft had to compete with coaches for induction because a single subcommittee was in charge of picking non-player names for the ballot. But this year, he only had to beat out other owners, executives, and assorted figures in the game. So it's a bit of a surprise. Kraft didn't make it, as one ESPN source bluntly put it. It's a huge surprise, said one source, who insisted on anonymity. And it's very disappointing, unless you're an NFL historian, you don't know who Ralph Hay is. Hay, who died in 1944, owned the Canton Bulldogs from 1918 to 1923. Those 5 years of ownership included the meeting hosted by Hay that led to the creation of the first incarnation of the NFL. Kraft's resume is a bit different. The 83-year-old purchased a controlling stake in the Patriots in 1994, blah, 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 blah. Right? Jerry Jones is in the Hall of Fame. A lot of people aren't happy about that. Of course, it's not like Kraft's tenure with the NFL is spotless. Between the Patriots' cheating scandals and his own incident at a massage parlor in Florida, he can only hope the voters who matter see it a different way next year. Do you know who one of the biggest public supporters of Israel and its continued war on Hamas and Gaza is? It's Bob Kraft. Robert Kraft. See, this is what I'm talking about. Here, I'll show you. Show you exactly. Right? The universe has a very funny way of working things out and settling things out. let's do this. I'll show you. And we'll take some calls after this. You guys are into it. Right here. The new Arab, Robert Kraft. The Super Bowl and America's pro-Israel propaganda. Amidst the spectacle of the Super Bowl, where touchdowns and halftime extravaganzas captivate audiences, this year's event saw a notable intrusion of pro-Israel propaganda that did not go unnoticed. Sponsored by both the State of Israel and Robert Kraft, a series of advertisements sought to sway public opinion amidst the football frenzy, putting the spotlight on pro-Israel messaging in public places and events such as the Super Bowl. The Hasbara machine, Israel's propaganda apparatus, has been disseminating misinformation and blatant lies since Israel's inception. This effort has continued unabated, especially after October 7th. Let's get to the Kraft stuff right here. There it is. Why Israel used the Super Bowl. The annual Super Bowl has morphed into a platform where the American ruling elite revels in nationalism and militarism. It's a spectacle where the sports watching public becomes engulfed in a barrage of flag waving, pro-Americanism, a narrative that seeks to momentarily dissipate the great problems facing the nation. However, beneath the guise of unity lies a shabby and unconvincing facade. Amid the spectacle, the Foundation to Combat Anti-Semitism, FCAS, a nonprofit organization created by Kraft, one of the wealthiest individuals in America and owner of the New England Patriots, made its Super Bowl debut with a high-profile ad featuring Dr. Clarence B. Jones, the former lawyer and advisor to Martin Luther King, who drafted King's I Have a Dream speech. The campaign urged viewers to hashtag stand up to Jewish hate and reportedly cost $7 million. Critics wasted no time accusing the campaign of serving as a thinly veiled promotion for Israeli interests. They rightfully labeled it as pro-Israel propaganda, arguing that it played into a victim narrative while ignoring the broader context of the Palestinian cause. The involvement of a prominent figure like Dr. Clarence B. Jones during Black History Month sparked further debate, with many questioning the motives behind leveraging marginalized communities for political gain. Adding another layer of controversy, Robert Kraft has been embroiled in legal issues, facing charges of solicitation of prostitution, stemming from his activities at the Orchids of Asia Day Spa. Kraft's attempt to evade accountability through legal maneuvering has raised questions. Not only that, but guess what else? Robert Kraft has a very tight relationship with Meek Mill. They are like this. And Meek Mill was a constant companion of P. Diddy at the Diddy parties. Robert Kraft is 2 degrees of bacon away from Sean P. Diddy Combs. Now, do you think that maybe perhaps that might have come into the brains of the people who want to or have the power to enshrine this man? Just think about this for a minute. Put the Israeli stuff aside. Put the Florida tug and rub and tug stuff aside. If he gets in and this thing blows up with Diddy and Meek Mill, and Meek Mill is like Bob Kraft's, comfort animal. He's with him everywhere. It's the weirdest fucking thing. It's almost as weird as Magic Johnson and Jerry Buss. How does this look to the NFL? What do they do? Do they disenshrine him? Like there's a reason why Bob Kraft is not in the Hall of Fame, in spite of all the titles that they've won. He's radioactive. Now, again, the reason I'm bringing this up is that we look at all of this propaganda going on Twitter. We look at all these pro-Israel appointees that Trump is putting together, some not necessarily as pro as others, but hey, we're talking Miriam Adelson payback. But over here, you have America's kind of richest, super Jewish sports owner who has all these ties to Israel. He gets awards from him all the time. He's got this propaganda campaign that he's going out of pocket for, right? Through his nonprofit, by the way. And he's not happening, right? So I'm just showing you something here. I'm just showing you that there are these weird kind of indirect and inverted things that take place and then will continue to take place. Now, if maybe next year Bob Kraft gets enshrined, but even if that's the case, there's a very good chance that like a lot of weird shit will come up and people will sit around scratching their asses thinking, well, we got him in. How the fuck do we get him out now? After he's passed away, maybe he gets in. He's 83 years old. Who knows how long he'll live? But I just wanted to show you that as a result of this, right? As kind of a comparison and contrast. Everything will not appear as it seems to be on the surface. What does Aquarius teach us? Non-attachment. Non-attachment. All right. We'll go a little bit longer today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick this in the chat. And if you guys have anything that you want to say, chime in on. All you got to do is click that link. And while you're figuring out whether or not you want to break out of your introspective shells, I'll read some comments. Oh, I look, I'm in favor of voting. I am in favor of voting. I am pro-voting. I voted this year, by the way. I am pro-voting. I'm also pro-voice. The two are not mutually exclusive, right? I'm pro-awareness. If you didn't know that Trump had $100 million in debt to Miriam Adelson that he had to sort out, you're living under a rock, right? If you didn't think Trump was going to make some pro-Israeli appointees, right, you're living under a rock. If you're hoping that there would be more pro-American appointees during this go around, I don't blame you, right? I don't blame you. But we're also pro-voice. Like there were people that voted for Joe Biden. Do you think they all loved what Joe Biden did? No. Just ask Cenk Uygur, who now all of a sudden wants to take on the Democratic Party and reshape it in his image, right? The two aren't mutually exclusive. You can vote and be pro somebody, right? But doesn't mean you can't have a voice and say, hey, look, this fucking doesn't fly, right? Like we have an interest in this as well. We're not brain dead. We're not, these dispensationalist Christians with hooks in our mouths. So I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. You can do both, right? Or you can choose not to participate. You do whatever the fuck you want. It's America, right? That's what this country is based upon. Let's see. Cato was invited to freak parties. Ooh, about that. Let's see what Steve has here. Remember, elites want out of the shadows to live in the open. If they get their way, there will be a day when Diddy freak parties will be commonplace. That's a really interesting point. Again, I think there's unintended consequences for that. But Steve, I think you bring up a really good point. Let's see. What else do we have here? How about all these people who are leaving the country? Do we have a running list now? I think we have Ellen DeGeneres and Portia de Rossi. Why does it feel like Portia de Rossi is being held against her will? Stockholm syndrome. Who else do we have? Richard Gere's leaving. Tom Hanks is leaving. Billie Eilish is leaving. So some of these people are making good on their claims to leave. You know what? I respect that. I respect that. Christine says then the NFL can no longer deny their filthy nature. Yeah, I mean, Kraft really is a litmus for that, isn't he? Total litmus for that. Let's see what else we have here. I'll put the link back in if you want to come in. The link back in if you want to come in. It's right there in the comment section. It's right there in the comment section. Diddy was gross and untalented. Oh my God. Totally gross and untalented. The fuck has he ever done musically? And yes, totally gross. Nailed it. 100%. 100%. Let's see. Let's just click on that link, Barbara. Where's that link? All you gotta do is click on that link. Right there. Look under my name. Click on my link. What does Laura Liberty have to say? Man, Cato. Should have her on them. My fourth grade teacher daughter is Tanika Ray, who says her experience with Diddy was horrific. My classmate I tutored in high school was in a Diddy band. Her bandmate was given as a party favor to Nick Carter, who, by the way, is no longer with us. Nick Carter committed suicide. Laura knows Thomas Massey. Cool. Laura worked. Let's get Massey on the show. All right, we got Laura Liberty. Hi, Laura.
Hello.
Can you hear? We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Are you talking? All right. Are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Welcome to the show. Thank you for
thank you
for jumping in. So, are you the Laura that they're talking about here with Thomas Massey? Is that you?
Yes. Thomas Massey's on our board of directors at the Crime Research Center. Mm-hmm. And so I spent a lot of time with him this summer. We were mainly doing the crime numbers because Biden and Kamala were saying that the crime was down. And so all summer we were basically working on getting the proper numbers and making sure that Trump had all of that information. But now Thomas Massey will be working at the Department of Agriculture. And I have 300 cows with my brother in Montana. And then I had a garden store for a really long time. I grew medical marijuana for 20 years. And I've put a few gardens in schools, which was the main thing I did in Montana. So yeah, my fiance will be working somewhere in the Department of Justice. He did during the last Trump administration. And then I will be working in the Department of Agriculture with Thomas.
So tell us, what is Thomas Massey like on a day-to-day basis?
Oh my gosh. So he's awesome. He's a real human, and every single day of his life, he walks around actually with a counter on his suit.
Right.
And so it's literally just constantly spinning, which is very concerning when you're looking at him and you can just watch that counter going on his suit. But he's just like a real amazing human. I mean, he's very personable. He's so knowledgeable and so honest. I honestly, before meeting him, didn't think there was one honest politician ever anywhere. So I'm super happy to meet Thomas Massey and know that they're real humans in politics.
Yeah, we need a lot more Thomas Masseys, for sure. And I love the fact that he just seems to be unflappable, like whatever comes up, whatever he has to deal with, particularly the tragic loss of his wife. He gets back on his feet and, he gets right back at it. And that's incredibly inspirational.
Yes, it really is. I mean, I saw him at Freedom Fest in Las Vegas, and his wife had just died days before that. So I honestly didn't think that he would be there, but he was, and we had dinner with him, and it was pretty sad just because at Freedom Fest, like a lot of people were coming up to him to tell him they were sorry about his wife, which is like a really nice thing to do, but it also, he's still really sad about it. He sold all of his cows at the Kentucky farm just because he can't care for them anymore, and his wife was such a huge part of that.
Oh, wow.
And right before she died, we actually had their grandson at Mount Rainier and had a really great trip. And then somehow she just never woke up. They just found her in her bed and she had never woke up. So it was a huge tragedy.
Now, I don't want to get too personal, but did she have any pre-existing conditions of any sort?
Well, so that was a little odd, and I wanted to ask more. His chief of staff said that she was sick, and that it wasn't terminal, were his exact words, but she was sick in some way. So I'm not really sure what that was.
Well, it's a really interesting kind of symbolic thing, like having to sell the cows and losing his wife, because cows are often related to nurturing, right? Whether it's milk, or the fur, the hide, or even meat, right? So he loses this nurturing life partner, and then the cows have to go as well. That's really heavy on a very deep level. But I know a lot of people are pulling for him, and he's, using kind of an agricultural term, he's the best of breed, right, for what we have as an American politician. So that's awesome. Well, if he ever wants to come on a moderately successful podcast, he's always welcome here.
Yeah, I will let him know, and he may very well want to do that. I definitely, just because I'm so into astrology, and it was Uranus in Taurus, and it's kind of the end of that when he had to sell his cow.
Right.
Capricorn. I was like, wow, that's crazy. She was in the astrological.
Well, where do you live physically? Are you in Kentucky, or are you in California? Where are you?
No, I'm in Montana.
Montana. Okay, cool. Well, this is awesome. And, thank you for dropping by and sharing some Massey info. And anything else you want to ask or bring to the table today?
No, maybe I would just ask like anyone's opinion on what they think Department of Agriculture should be involved in. I mean, I know Massey's main bills are changing the way cows are sold and gone to market, which is a huge problem for us. We have cows, but we have to take them to a stockyard where we don't, we get just like $2 a pound or so. And at that time, all of our cows are kind of grass fed and natural, but then they're trucked to these large corporate owned fattening places in the Midwest to, by Cargill or Bill Gates or whoever, and they take a majority of the profits. and then give them corn, fat them up with corn, give them a bunch of, who knows, antibiotics, everything else, because they're in close quarters. And so his prime bill would be making sure that we could sell them differently. And then his other bill is making sure that the government doesn't contribute to any lab grown meat at all, period. No research, no manufacture, nothing like that. So those are like two really important bills that everyone certainly should call their representatives and make sure that that gets passed. But yeah, just other than that, what all of you think the Department of Agriculture should do.
Oh, that's great. So one of the things that happened here in Texas is we had a massive fire in West Texas, like, kind of around the Abilene area, lost, just thousands and thousands of heads of cattle. And then, the land is scorched, and the loss of hay and the rebuilding of fences. And I know that there's subsidies for growing corn and soybeans and other crops like that, but it almost feels like there should be sort of an emergency fund for small farmers who, undergo some kind of catastrophic, loss by, act of God or nature or something like that. Because a lot of these guys really hard to get back on their feet. So has he thought about sort of like a safety net for small and independent farmers?
Yes, I think he has. I know that would be of a huge help. And for us, we've gotten subsidies like when we're in drought, which we still really are in a drought. And so without subsidies for drought, we would be in a really tough spot. And we've had giant fires where outside, like you literally couldn't see your hand in front of your face, and our cows are just like up on the mountain where the fire is. And
wow.
We had to just like every day we were wondering if we were going to have to move them. And, there's nowhere to put them, and you can't move them that fast. Even if like they don't have water, by the time you get them off the mountain and to the stockyard to sell them, like you're more likely going to lose your cows. So I definitely know he's thought about that. And then the other thing that is important, at least to us, was my brother was feeding in a cabless tractor for, it was like a 30, 40-year-old tractor. And he was doing that in -20 for 10, 12 years. And he finally just bought a new tractor that was $90,000. So it's like a $20,000 payment a year. And it's not funny, but a lot of times he jokes, well, I guess another year eating ramen. So I don't think people realize like how poor farmers are and like how much work we do. A majority of the time, it's girls that I know that will come out and help us brand and do stuff like that because we can't even afford workers. So yeah, I really think that the farmers do need the emergency fund, an equipment fund, even for labor. We're just not able to afford things like that. So
Yeah. Well, it seems like between him and RFK, they're a dynamic duo, and they may actually be able to make some change here with some of the areas that we're talking about. And I think you bring up a really, really good point. And this has nothing to do with voting, but getting involved and actually corresponding with somebody like Congressman Massey and creating a dialogue and maybe even asking, well, how can I help? Right? Like, what you have done, like, how can I help? What can I do? Is there something that I can participate in that supports our farmers and supports a healthy and balanced relationship with the land? So you bring up some really, really good points, and thank you for doing that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we do need to remember that we are a big part of the bills that get written and passed, and anyone can write a bill. Anyone, you can walk right into your Capitol and you can talk to the senators and tell them what you want. I did it when we were trying to get marijuana legalized here. So you can totally talk to your congressmen and senators, and you should be in close contact with them. And whether it's for farming or abortion, I think that we need to look at it as, even if Thomas does things on a federal level, you still have to, at your state level, make sure that certain things happen. And so we should look at it as a positive that we can affect these bills and write our own bills and get them passed. You can lobby just like people with big money, like you can do the exact same thing. It just costs you time and energy.
I like that. Before you go, I believe Doug Burgum is the governor of your state. Is that right?
Greg Gianforte.
Okay, so I've got him mixed up.
Yeah.
I've got Burgum is what, North Dakota?
Yeah, he's North Dakota.
Okay, all right. Do you know anything about him? I mean, it's kind of general vicinity, but do you know anything about Burgum?
So I'm going to the governor's ball on December 6th, and I'll be in closer contact with him. I mentioned that he was kind of good, but my son, who hunts and fishes quite a bit, actually told me, no, he's the reason why we can't cross certain public lands. So that I didn't know. But in general, I do think he's great, but that is concerning about the public lands. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Hey, thank you for dropping in here. This has been a really informative part of our show, and you're always welcome back anytime. And put in a good word for us over here with Congressman Massey. We'd love to have him on.
I will. And also the one last thing, like I said, if you do have a farmer or someone that's close to you or a rancher, like even contact them and say, hey, I'll help you on a cattle drive, or I'll help you with this, or I'll help you with that. Because we do need tons of labor. We really do.
All right. Good deal. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Laura. You take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. This is really cool, right? Somebody who has gotten involved and participates. Why? Because that's the world she lives in. She's in agriculture, she's in farming, and why not? Right? Like if you have to do it, if you have to do the thing, and you have these various organelles that are attached to the thing that you're doing, and it either makes your job more difficult or it makes your job more effective, right? Why not get involved? Why not interface? And in fact, it's probably just a part of the participatory part of our society and our culture, which I think keeps it healthy. All right, let's bring Double B on here. It's the amazing Barbara Boots. What's happening, Barbara?
Well, it took a while to figure this out. I mean, this doesn't seem to work over on the oh shoot, can't think of it. Anyway, the Safari side. So I had to go over to Google. So anyway, I got that sorted out. But yeah, I've been sort of just listening to all of the things you've been saying. Your last speaker was, well, I'm really excited to hear that Thomas Massey was in agriculture. I didn't hear that. So, I kept thinking that's got to be the pick, please. So this is good news. But anyway, now what I was thinking, which you've talked about so many things, and particularly sort of the disconnects there are between people who have different responses to the election outcome and so on, and how they're responding. To me, it's the things I've been listening to and reading and so forth. There've been massive amounts of new energies pumped into the planet externally, and it's raised the overall frequency of the planet here, so that people are finding it, either easy to adjust depending on what their belief systems are, or really difficult. And people are still trying to hang on to the old paradigms. Mm-hmm. And the new paradigm is actually that we are all one, that we need to flow into each other to the point where there's such a degree of empathy that you feel another person's reaction if you have a negative response to them, and so forth. I mean, it would basically, I mean, this is still, it's not happening yet, but it's in process. And then when a process like this is ongoing, it's pretty chaotic, and people feel disconnected because, you know, they've staked their sort of whole lives on, you know, a particular position, a particular belief system, and they're not inclined to change. And particularly the older a person gets, the more fixed they become in that psychological paradigm. So yes, I can see why there are all kinds of confusions on gender, on ages, on, you know, positions you should take. And to your point about all these pro-Israel people, and again, I think the motto for Pluto and Aquarius should be the best laid plans of mice and men.
Yeah. I think that that's a really good tagline, because it's not going to go according to plan.
Not
right.
at all.
I mean, this is just you know, basic astrology 101, that, you know, this is how Aquarius operates.
And so that's why I think, okay, as you've said, on the surface of it, okay, this doesn't look like a particularly good thing to have all these pro-Israel people, but with the inversions coming in place, I mean, there are inversions everywhere.
That's right.
That, you know, it's going to be surprising to me. The big signal that things were really going down the way they should was the fact that Trump got elected, especially when there were so many sort of sensitive psychics, astrologers, and so forth that were giving a different outcome. Mm-hmm. But again, this is all part of what our reality really is multiple realities. I mean, every decision you make has a separate reality attached to it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, depending on what the overall collective kind of how they come together in a particular point in time, that's the reality you end up with. And again, if you couple that with all of these energies that are coming in to push us into another level of communication, and to your point, you know, the internet will not be necessary because there will be the psychic connections. But the internet was a necessary first step to get people into the concept of how you connect to other people around the world, among your family and all of your, you know, everybody. So, this is what's coming. And I think some of these, and according to some channels, you're going to have actual ET sightings late 26, 27. Who, among other things, are going to give us holographic images of what our true history is, going back millions of years. And that's going to sort of upset a lot of apple carts. But I mean, people are already beginning to get in train with the idea that, you know, reality is constantly changing. The only reality is change. You can't you can have sort of principles, guiding principles for your daily life and overall outlook, but you know, it's very hard to predict the future because there's so many possibilities. And you know, if it's all happening at once, you know, anything is possible. So I mean, it's a little bit disjointed in how I'm explaining it, but I'm just seeing that, yes, currently pro-Israel on the cabinet, but you know, in a year or two, it's going to look quite different. You know, so
yeah. I mean, again, if you didn't know going in that there was going to be a propensity for this to happen, I'm sorry, you know, where have you been for the last 8 years? Right. Like, you know, and there's, again, political payback, Miriam Adelson. The difference this time is that, you know, at least Trump has some loyalists around him.
Yep.
But again, the theme here is that by doing this, by AIPAC and Israel going, you know, full frontal.
Yeah.
Yesterday on Twitter, like, what did it do? It activated 99.9% of the people on Twitter to give them a big middle finger. Yep. Right. So this is going to be a consistent theme moving forward. And so for all these people, like, well, we told you so, you know, you're going to get this, you're going to get that. They don't even know, right? They think they know,
Right.
but they don't even know.
But if they're operating on the old paradigm, of
They're
course,
operating on the old paradigm.
and that's it's dissolving, as we speak.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think the biggest thing for people is to whatever fears or uncertainties they have is to look it straight in the face and say, I don't have to accept that reality. It's the fear is the biggest impediment right now. And anybody who's
well, I think a lot of people have been traumatized.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
A
lot walk away from that too.
Yeah, and it's like they're just waiting for the next trauma shock, right?
Oh.
And
no, you create your own reality.
it may not necessarily happen the way that they think it's going to happen.
Well, exactly.
Right? Yeah. So just with Aquarius, you have to develop the witness self a little bit and detach a little bit, and and we all have our biases and we all have our points of view and our predilections and the things that we want, to occur in our lives for ourselves and for our children, our grandchildren, etc.
Right.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it'll be a good time for your dog. Your Aquarian dog is just going to come alive with Pluto.
Well, he's right here. Can you see Mr. Anki?
There he is. He's right there. Look at him. That's his time. It's his time. Anki, my man.
Yes.
Look at him. Oh, he's a star. Look at that guy. Yeah. I'm a fan.
I know.
Barbara, thanks for coming on here. Those are words of wisdom.
Well,
and
I've been thinking about him for a while, so.
Yeah. Well, you got any plans for Anki this weekend?
Not this weekend. We had last weekend, and it's kind of disappointing again.
Hey, you never know with him, do you? Right?
No.
He's your Aquarian teacher.
Yeah, that's what you keep saying, and it's kind of frustrating. I mean, he did pass on the rally, the first rally trial in the morning. And then he wanted to run out of the ring the second trial. And
he said, I did it the first. I'm good.
He's got 2 more to go before he gets to finish the title. So,
no,
that's just the same with the obedience. He's perfect on obedience until it comes to the stays. And, because, I put him in a sit stay, go get the leash, come up to him. I come within 2 feet and he stands up. It's like, no. Don't do that. Just wait until I come around. So, anyway, that's my boy.
Teachers come in all forms.
Oh, they do indeed.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
all right. Well, we'll catch you on the tech side.
Yeah.
And thanks for coming on, Barbara. Appreciate it.
No problem. Glad to do it. All righty.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. That was the great Barbara Boots right there. There she goes. Anybody else want to jump in? Join in on the chat today before we sign off. We'll go to 2:30. If we don't have any more people that want to communicate, then we'll wrap it up and call it a day. But yeah, I mean, I think she brings up the extraterrestrial stuff. I'm not. I'm not in. I'm not out. Right? It's like I have to kind of see it. I've seen, by the way. I've seen Kraft. Like I think a lot of you have seen Kraft, and I've seen them in various circumstances and situations. All 3 of which the 3 main ones. Well, the 4 main ones have been very different from each of the other. So I know that something is out there, right? It's out there. I've seen them. What they are, that's a whole other question, right? One of the times clearly manifested from what I would call another dimension, right? And this was something that just came into like my awareness with another person. We both saw it at the same time and nobody else saw it. Right. So it was definitely kind of a dimensional thing. So these things kind of move. I think they move in and out of space time. I think the government has their own version of these craft, right? There's probably other countries that have versions of this crap. So, it's like, yeah, it's there. It's unidentified. We can at least agree upon that. And I've interviewed some abductees, and they have very unusual experiences. Very unusual experiences. So they've had something happen to them. The holographic stuff that comes out of like the meeting that Eisenhower supposedly had with the first gray aliens, and they holographically showed him two things. One was a hologram of Jesus on the cross being crude. Now, can you imagine that? Like you're Eisenhower and some people that he's assembled with him. One of them was this guy named Gerald Light, who was like a spiritualist. And you're first of all, you're talking with these little fucking, ETs, and then they throw up a hologram right in the room of Jesus being crucified. Right, and there's blood, and and there's eyes rolling back in his head. Like, holy shit! This is supposedly what happened. And then they went into the future, and they basically showed the sun dying, and then the end of the earth. Like, if that wasn't enough trauma, I don't know what is, right? But that's the technology that they use. They brought it in holographically in the third dimension. They could walk around it, right? It wasn't just like a projection. They could walk around and see like the back of Christ's head, right? And all the other shit. So it was like right there in the room. So could you imagine Eisenhower after that, like have to put his brain back together again, if the story is true? And I think there's probably some truth to it. Okay. I think we're done. Laura Liberty, God bless you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your service. They always say that to people who fought in the army, right? Thank you for your service. Laura Liberty, thank you for your service. And for everybody who has participated today in chat or watches this show, thank you for your service, because I know at some level that's what you're doing. I know it's what you're doing, whether it's a professional service or it's just part of your dharma. Thank you for doing it. Stay in touch with it. Don't ever lose it, because when you lose that, you lose a part of yourself that's connected to our humanity, and our humanity is connected to our divinity. They're not mutually exclusive. And with that, I wish you all a great day, great weekend. We'll see you back here on Sunday night. A little Sunday Night Astro Live. We'll get into Pluto and Aquarius. We're going to be breaking it down. For all you people over on Locals, shortly I will be scheduling a full breakdown of 2025 astrologically, and that is for supporting members. So you supporting members will get the full breakdown astrologically and I'm going to go through every sign. I'll be doing this thing for probably about 2.5 hours, right? You'll get that. And I will do how do I say this? A more, I wouldn't say general, a shorter, briefer, less detail oriented, but still nonetheless informative presentation for the rest of you folks. So that's coming. All right. Sunday night, Pluto and Aquarius. And in the meantime, take care of each other. God bless, and bye for now.